Afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Come on. This is my last meeting as chair. Come on.
Do it again, start over.
I want to do it again. That's tomorrow, is technically. All right. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I like it. I like it all the way up there in TV land. It is December 6th. It is 12:18 p.m. and we will begin our individual committee meetings for the day for the December board meetings. And I will start with a specially formed committee for one purpose, which is the nominating committee, which I asked. Okay, we'll come back to that.
Yeah.
We'll come back to the nominating committee. We'll go ahead and go on to district flexibility and charter schools. Mr. Sweeney.
Terrific. Ms. Taylor? We have 3 agenda items, and we'll begin with item number 1.
Good afternoon. So the first item on the agenda is to approve a waiver for completion special schools. So you stated during the 2023 legislative session, the General Assembly passed House Bill 87, establishing the completion special schools as public schools providing non-traditional education programs and services, including dropout prevention, academic intervention, and high school credit recovery to students in grades 9 through 12 who are eligible to attend a traditional public school but are more likely to succeed in a non-traditional setting. These schools provide programs and services for students within the surrounding local school systems, but may directly enroll and serve as the local education agency for students who are at least 18 years of age and have already dropped out of school. State Board Rule 160-5-1-.28, student enrollment and withdrawal, does state that students that have dropped out for 1 quarter or more are eligible to enroll in the appropriate general education programs unless they attain the age of 20 by September 1st. House Bill 87 authorizes the State Board to approve completion special schools requests for waivers or variances of specifically identified state rules, regulations, policies, and procedures or provisions of Chapter 2 of Title 20 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated. The 3 current completion special schools are requesting a waiver of Section 2A1I of State Board Rule 160-5-1-.28 student enrollment and withdrawal to waive the identified 1 quarter period of time for dropout student enrollment eligibility. This waiver will allow students who are at least 18 years old and have not reached the age of 20 years old by September 1st and who have already dropped out but have dropped out for less than 1 quarter to enroll directly with the completion special school.
Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Taylor?
I've got a comment, a question. I think this is great that this means that those that are 18 can just go, they don't have to wait that 40-day period, right?
Correct.
That is excellent. And do we know, a couple of things, do we know what the enrollment in each one of these schools
We
looks
can
like
get that
now?
for you.
Can you get that for me? And also, financially, I know they just get state funding, right?
That is correct.
Okay, and can I get a copy? Everybody would probably like here. Yeah. That is great.
Right, are there any other questions? Stan?
I want to echo what Helen said. I think I've heard from some of these superintendents of the special charters that this has been an issue. And I also heard from some of the providers on at some of the sites that if we can close this gap, I think we're going to ensure that a lot more of our students are going to be able to continue their education. And I appreciate the departments looking at this. And we've run this by the bill writers and everybody else, and they're
Yes, we have.
absolutely fine with this, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Excellent job.
All right, without objection, we'll move this to the consent agenda. All right, so moved. Ms. Taylor, I'd like you to skip to number 3 and then we'll come back to 2.
Sure. Item number 3 is a request to approve the Charter School Board Governance Training Providers. The Official Code of Georgia Annotated Section 20-2-2072 and State Board Rule 160-4-9-.06 Charter authorizes financing, management, and governance training require charter school governing boards to receive governance training from charter school board governance training providers approved by the State Board of Education. Charter school governing boards must receive annual training within the 10 domains of the Standards for Effective Governance of Georgia Nonprofit Charter School Governing Boards, which include governance, strategic planning, board and community relations, policy development, board meetings, personnel, financial governance, ethics, workforce development, and joint venture among business, school systems, and technical college and others. Training providers are solicited by a request for proposal, and applications are vetted by the department's staff. New applicants must submit their application and materials for review, and previously approved providers submit any proposed changes to their approved training materials.
All right, is there any questions?
Had a quick comment. So I see that there were a couple that were added on here on the list. And the very first one is this 21 Cobalt. And one of the bullet points of the things that they train, one of the courses is onboarding board members, welcome aboard the crazy train. And then another one is how to avoid 3-hour board meetings, effective governance. I was wondering if we could bring them in here.
Constitution.
We have a statement, I guess that was a question at the end. Are there any other questions for Ms. Taylor? Right, without objection, we'll move this to the consent agenda. And then item number 2, and as just a notation, this is for just initiation and posting. Ms. Taylor?
Yes, item number 2 is a request to initiate an amendment to Rule 160-5-1-.33, Strategic Waivers, and Title 20, No Waivers School Systems. State Board Rule 160-5-1-.33, Strategic Waivers, and Title 20, No Waivers School Systems is being amended to incorporate the following changes. To update the contract terms section of the rule to align the Strategic Waivers accountability provisions with state law and Georgia's amended Every Student Succeeds Act state plan as approved by the U.S. Department of Education. To incorporate language related to the requirements of local education agencies to maintain or achieve financial stability in accordance with the Official Code of Georgia Annotated, Section 20-2-67, and to provide general cleanup and edits to update agency and legal references. If approved, this rule will be posted for 30 days for public review and comment.
Fantastic. All right, does anybody have any questions?
Well, I called you with some questions, and so maybe you can just answer. When the ESSA plan is the new plan that DOE has gotten approved, correct? So have we seen a full layout of what that looks like? So we're taking away the 100-point. Help me understand that, what we're doing, and where is mastery and beating the odds, where does all that come into that plan?
So let me help
Or back,
frame
okay.
the question. I think one of the issues or concerns that Helen expressed was rather than having a single score, like CCRPI, for example, why this change has to be made and what is going to be included in it.
Well, I think as we look at that, this is typically referred to, like you said, hey, this is our report card. Well, one of the things we look at was the mission of the DOE, was the mission of the accountability system. And I think it is to, make sure that our schools know exactly where they are great at, where they need to, improve. And so I think instead of just having one summative score, we've now breaking it down into various areas such as maybe literacy, looking at math, being able to look at those are where you'll see your 100-point, scales located within that. So the objective is to make sure that when you look at the school, that you can see exactly where a school is. You can see what areas that they are strength in, have strength in and where they need to improve. So I think it gives better transparency than just some blanket score that's out there. When we look at that, I think we're still, ironing that out, if I'm correct, Ms. Taylor, I think with
So
CCRPI.
There's a 0 to 100 component score for each of the components.
Yeah.
So that's what it just doesn't roll up to a single score.
All right, but we had that before, right? Because in mastery, we had 30%, and in beating the odds, there were 5 different readiness and different things. So are those different levels, you're saying they're still gonna have a certain percentage to go with them?
I haven't seen, I don't think, is Dr. Timberlake with us?
She's not online, but no, they're each just the 0 to 100 components. So each component is just a 0 to 100 score.
So each one of them could be 50 now or whatever, depending.
They don't
on-
roll up, so they don't need a separate percentage. They don't need a percentage of a single score.
Okay.
So is it safe to say that is the reporting kind of evolving, or you already have it established? I think that's what Helen's trying to get to.
So the components are
understand what
already
you're doing.
established. The components of CCRPI have not changed. So all we're doing here is aligning the old, current contracts aligned to the previous ESSA plan where everything rolled up to a single score, and that's what the accountability was based on. This rule is making the adjustment to utilize the language that's in state law for accountability so that we can now align to the new ESSA plan.
But also, I think that, I mean, the real key of what we're looking at, if it's accountability for accountability's sake, what have we actually accomplished? Schools and districts, and even I think for transparency, need to be able to see not just one score, but our job is to improve. And if we know that we're doing well in literacy, then that stands alone. I think that, I think it helps messaging to see what's out there. It is definitely, to me, it allows our districts to be more targeted in what they should be looking at to improve. Once again, when I was talking to the staff of looking at putting this together, I never had a report card that just had one single grade. And I think that was the one thing we wanted to look at if we were measuring, was like, we're not throwing away the 100 points. It's, each component has the 100 points. And so I think it allows us to see, where they're looking at. I think that when we start to look at, I think even with the looking at districts and renewing, charters, being able to look at the schools and say where they're at, what are you doing collectively? What does that look like? I think it's better. Because once again, what do you do with accountability? If it's just a score for score's sake, then really I don't believe that's in the best interest of education.
Richard, I'm not questioning anything, I just didn't
Yeah.
understand it. I haven't seen it and I didn't understand it, and I know with Swissy, there were two, we have charter and Swissy schools. And in the old contract with Swissy, we had that 3% that what they got flexibility for accountability. And over 7 years, we would evaluate, and I think GOSA evaluated because they were an independent evaluator. And when I went back and pulled up all of the rules that we had and looked at where we were on the red line here, we've taken a lot out. And we've taken some responsibility off of GOSA, and I didn't know, that was my talking to Scott. I said, I'd just like to know how these are the original things that are on line. And now we have this with a ton of red line that have taken out a lot of things or turned around or given duties, responsibilities elsewhere. I just don't know. I don't know how that affects the Swissy schools. I don't know where GOSA's role in this anymore. Are we even asking them to monitor and see? Because that's what that strategic waiver school was.
So the monitoring for GOSA actually was transferred over to DOE in the 2020 legislative session via Senate Bill 68. So we that was a cleanup provision in that happened a few years ago, and so we were cleaning up the language there. We still coordinate with GOSA on the other pieces of it, but the monitoring was transferred to DOE at that time. The language that's stricken out for the accountability, again, is, just specifically to align it specifically to the language that's on strategic waiver accountability that's outlined in state law. So that language comes straight from Code Section 20-2-84A as the accountability requirements for each of the contracts. The previous language that looks like a lot is only because it specifies how it was with the old ESSA plan. So even without changing it to the language in state law, that language would have to be stricken for the new contracts because those measures wouldn't even be able to be done right now.
And if it's the board's pleasure, I could, glad to have Dr. Timberlake come in, give a presentation next month and on CCRPI and the accountability system.
I think you've got kind of an analogy on how this may help because, obviously obviously I hated to, but I had to leave the discussion for this last meeting, but it's almost like, because this was much of the discussion, I know some of you hate it when we say many years ago, but when we came up with, it was a very heated discussion on, were we gonna use one thing? Was it gonna be a star rating? Was it gonna be, I mean, that was one of the biggest ones I remember in my history, that discussion right there. I think what Superintendent Woods has made some very valid points is all of it rolls up, but what is a parent looking at? And I guess really in my brain, it's almost like this rating we have now before the change, it's almost like that's your GPA, boom, which is the sum of all of that together, which in my opinion is a pretty good synopsis when somebody's just looking at it. My daughter just went through the college admissions process. Everything, what's your GPA? And then it does get into rigor. And side note, fortunately, she made it in the early acceptance of Georgia. Go Dogs. I'm gonna have to buy some red and black now to go with my Georgia Southern blue. But no, I mean, so that's it. And the purpose was then, and the argument that won the day of the debate was we need something that's clear and concise. And Joe Sixpack, I remember that terminology, can look at it, anybody can look and say, they know what an A is, an A, 9, they know what a B is, to be pretty clear. But that doesn't tell the whole story. I mean, did you get all A's in basket weaving and basketball, or did you get an A in calculus? Or an A in literacy and math and literacy, which we know are our two big ones. So we do have to dive deeper, and that all needs to be made relative. But I mean, the board voted last week, and it is what it is on that now. But really, I think that's the GPA, and anybody can look at it and know that school's got a 3.8 or an A, a B, a C, but that doesn't tell the whole story. You're exactly right, Superintendent Woods, but in my brain and even going back, that's how it wraps. So I don't know what we can do to maybe still keep it clear, because all of them don't, a parent that's working and doesn't even really understand it, they don't really know that the literacy is more important than math, and they're just wanting to know, how's my kid doing? How's my school doing? So, and that's the debate, and it is what it is, where this board votes and does it. But I think kind of in my mind, that's how this lines up, and we'll have to just make the best and continue to evolve and go with Ms. Allison and get that review next week.
Yeah, one of the things that I heard from a lot of teachers and not teacher principals was they would love to have had some kind of a constant measure that would allow them to trend from year to year to year. And I think with the exception of maybe 2 years, the CCRPI was the same. I think it was frustrating because the metrics, the underlying metrics were changing and so forth. Going forward, and I know we're always at the whim of the legislators. I mean, part of this is changing our rule to comport with state law. But what level of confidence do we have that those metrics are going to remain relatively constant so people can trend those and also rely on those numbers from year to year?
I have no plans on changing things. So, that's all I can kind of, say for us. I think it is trying to look at stability. We are rolling out, all the metrics we're setting in place, even to standard adoption, which is kind of came up. Let's give it 7 years. Let's have some stability built into it. And that's all I can say from my end. Once we're set, we're set. And I, feel that this is a very fair, assessment of what we're doing. It gives, I think, to me, more transparency to our schools, to our parents. And it gives a breakdown that allows them to evaluate. It shows what is important for us as a state, and again, what we have looked at. And I think that, to me, it is trying to create something that is very reflective. If we say it's our report card, then, it needs to look like a report card. It needs to be something that's not oversimplified, but yet we still retain that 100-point system, built within, and, we move forward from there. But I have no plans has to change.
Any other questions? All right, can we move this to the consent agenda? All right, without objection, we'll move that to the consent agenda, and Mr. Chair, thank you, Ms. Taylor. Mr. Chair, that completes the order of business today for the Committee for the District Flexibility and Charter Schools.
Should I ask you a question just for clarification? Are we still planning on having Dr. Timberlake come and talk to us about this?
You want next month?
Next month.
It'd be helpful
I
to,
think so.
I would agree. I just want to make sure I want to make sure we're clear on that. Well, could I ask the board then, if you have questions that you'd like for her to ask, would you try to get them to her in advance? So that she can know how to prepare? You know, through the chain of command, but get them to Superintendent Woods before the January meeting, and then we can, I think she'll be better prepared if she can do that. Fair enough?
All right, thank you, Mr. Sweeney, I appreciate that. We deviated from our agenda and we'll come back to the nominating committee. And the nominating committee was created by me for the sole purpose of creating a slate for officers. I appointed myself and Scott Sweeney, and chair of that committee is Mr. Frank Griffin. Mr. Griffin, do you have a report from the nominating committee this time?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, the nominating committee met and we would like to put forth the following as a slate of officers for the coming year. Dr. Stan DeJarnett would be chair, Ms. Fenna Petty would be vice chair, and Mr. Matt Donaldson would be first vice chair vice chair over. That is a recommendation from this committee. Is there any discussion?
All right. Hearing no discussion, we will pull that for a separate vote tomorrow.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. All right, we're right on time, so we'll go to budget at 12:40, and Mr. Donaldson, yeah, it's amazing. So, I leave it with you, sir.
Impressive.
Thank
We'll
you.
get finished on time too, though.
No, we won't.
All right.
Don't
Russ,
hurry.
item one.
Item one, this is our grant for our FY '24 Title III Part A Immigrant Sub-Grant Awards. The purpose of this grant is to ensure English learners, including immigrant children and youth, attain English proficiency and develop high levels of academic achievement in English. The total grant amount is not to exceed $1,017,911.
Very good. Any questions or comments? Item two.
All right, item two is our grant for our 2023 National Elementary and Secondary Education Act Distinguished School Award. We've got two schools, Robert Shaw Traditional Theme School in DeKalb County Schools and Midway Elementary School in Pierce County Schools. Were selected to represent Georgia and designated as the 2023 National ESEA Distinguished Schools by NASPA. The total grant amount is not to exceed $40,000, which is $20,000 per school.
Very good. Any questions or comments? Item three.
All right, item three is our grant amendment for our FY '24 Education for Homeless Children and Youth Grant. The purpose of this grant is to assist with instructional supports and pupil services for Georgia's homeless children and youth. The grant amendment amount is $1,986,048, which brings the total grant amount not to exceed $6,511,976.
Russ, where did the additional allocation come from? I know one year we allocated some unused travel funds, I believe.
I believe
Where
that
does
this is
additional-
carryover, but Sean, I think Sean's on.
Yeah.
This is carryover.
I'm here. There was an overall increase from Ed. We also had some state activities funds that were unused that we're allocating out to the districts.
Very good. Thank you. Any other questions for Sean? Okay. Item four.
All right, item four is a contract for individualized education program facilitation training. This contract will allow for the vendor, which is TBD, to provide training on IEP team facilitation to local school districts and state contracted facilitators. The total contract amount is also TBD, which you guys will discuss in the executive session.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Item five.
All right, item five is a contract amendment for assistive technology and accessible educational materials. The purpose of this contract amendment is to increase the total compensation amount in order to provide for continued access to assistive technology software to support K-12 students with disabilities. The amendment amount is $400,000. The total contract amount is not to exceed $1,727,786.
Sean, what was the reason for the additional 400,000?
Yeah, so we had, some increase in the new Braille embossers, that we have also, and increase in some administrative costs for this, and then a decrease in one of the contributors.
Okay. Is that cost reasonable increase based on the original contract?
It is, and we're still having conversations, but with them as well. But we do consider this to be a reasonable increase. Also, an overall increase in the use of the materials as well.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Item 6.
Item 6 is a contract renewal with Research Triangle Institute. The purpose of this contract with Research Triangle Institute is for the administration and fulfillment of the programmatic requirements of the voluntary lead testing in school and child care program drinking water grant. The total contract amount is not to exceed $2,294,400.
Very good. This also increased dramatically from the previous, from 823 to 2.2 million.
Yeah.
What's the reason for the increase? Additional allocation or?
I believe that's the new grant award amount. Mike, you're on here? Mike Sanders is the director of this.
Yes, yes. Sarah and I are on here. Sarah, can you speak to that?
Yes, this is our new grant award allocation from the EPA, and it's going to cover, that's actually covering 2 years. So one of the years you just split that in half, it'll be $1 million for the next year and then the rest. So.
Okay, so it's 2 years, so the previous one was just one, so it's really not.
Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, item 7.
All right, this is a contract amendment for Southwest Georgia RESA. The contract amendment is to cover the costs of stipends, substitutes, professional learning subscriptions, and instructional kits and training materials for additional teachers and personnel participating in professional learning on science of reading and multisensory reading methodology for teachers supporting students with disability and struggling readers. This contract amendment amount is $153,000, which brings the total contract not to exceed $356,170.
Very good. Any questions or comments? Item 8.
All right, item 8 is a contract with Kennesaw State University. I teach Bagwell College of Education. This contract will provide support for the communication and implementation of personalized learning in 3 school districts in accordance with the Georgia Restart Grant. The total contract is not to exceed $475,000.
Very good. Dr. Aldridge, she's here. How did we settle on KSU?
Thank you.
Sure, you will come up to the, so the online can hear you.
I guess
We're
it's
good.
good afternoon
We're good.
already. We selected KSU because it was part of our group of organizations that we worked together from the beginning of the GREAT grant. GREAT grant is the grant that works with personalized learning, providing personalized learning to school districts. So they have a school education that works providing training, endorsement to teachers throughout the state on personalized learning initiatives and instructional practices. That's the reason that they were included in our initial application for the grant, and that's why they are working with us on this program.
Okay. Do we have any other schools apply?
Actually, they have been working throughout the state. This particular grant is just to increase the services to those 3 school systems called Cobb County, Paulding, and Fulton schools, because they are requesting more assistance, especially in a face-to-face delivery modality instead of the online.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 9.
All right, item 9 is a contract amendment with Greenlight Fitness. This contract amendment will extend the dates of the current contract with Greenlight Fitness and increase the total compensation in order to provide school districts continued access to FitnessGram software in order to avoid a gap in services for LEAs as Georgia Department of Education develops an alternative platform. This amount of the amendment is $138,338, which brings the total contract amount to $293,338.
Very good. Mr. Royal?
So it looks to me like in there, this is just a bridge until we get going. But this amount is almost double the annual amount. Is that correct?
And Dr. Aldridge?
No, the first time,
If you will, come up so we can, everybody online can hear you.
Good afternoon. The first amount was for a 6-month period, and so this amount is for an additional 6 months so that as we're developing the new platform that will be supported by Georgia Department of Ed, this just allows us not to have a break in service so that we can provide the state mandated reporting. But after this year, we'll actually start a pilot in January and then have our platform ready to roll out in the fall of next year.
So that wasn't an annual amount, that was a 6
Correct, that
month.
was a 6-month period.
Thank you. Good. Any other questions? All right, item 10.
Item 10 is a grant for computer science teacher equipment and community grant. Funds awarded to selected districts will enable computer science teachers to collaborate with each other across the state and with outside specialists, so they are better equipped to connect their students' learning to post-secondary opportunities and careers. This total grant is not to exceed $184,000.
Very good. Any questions for Dr. Aldridge? This is for item 2. Okay. Item 11.
All right, item 11 is our Computer Science for Georgia Capacity Grant. These grant funds will allow school districts to offer professional development for computer science teachers, to acquire computer science equipment, and to obtain curricular resources. The total grant amount is not to exceed $154,250.
Any questions or comments?
What is the
Ms.
number?
Rice?
What is the number of computer science teachers now? Because
Let me get that to you and I'll send it to you to make sure I have the most accurate number.
okay, because we started out, needing.
I'm sorry.
We just started out needing computer science, and math teachers went over.
It has
trying-
grown significantly
Yeah.
since we started, so I'll get you the trajectory from
Okay.
when we began to where we are now.
Be great, thanks.
Very good. Any other questions? Item 12.
All right, item 12 is a contract amendment with our FY24 computer aid. This contract is being amended to support the development of a replacement for the FitnessGram software and program platform. The amendment amount is $300,000, which brings the total contract for computer aid to $9,600,000.
Any questions or comments? Item 13.
Item 13 is a contract amendment for Dell Computer Corporation, or Microsoft Azure. This contract amendment is in support of the agency's data application and modernization initiative. The total amendment amount is $4 million, and the total contract amount is not to exceed $6 million.
Okay, Dr. Osborne. See, sir, you come up, please.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So this is increasing 300%.
Yes, sir, it is.
So tell us why.
So the reason we're trying to kind of extrapolate and algorithmically predict what our costs for Azure will be as we complete and go into our final phases of our modernization effort. So obviously, as you well know, we have lifted the entirety of the agency from on-prem now to being in cloud. And as we're completing that work and beginning to think about and begin our optimization exercises, we worked with Microsoft to say, what is our Azure cost going to be like for the duration of our modernization initiative? So that's what we predict our cost will be.
Okay. So how did it, I guess we guessed too low to begin with?
No, sir.
or-
Actually, as we're obviously getting to the end of ESSER funds, that's been one of our costs that we allocated within our ESSER funds. Again, we're getting into the final phases. Most everything budget item that you see from me today is in response to as we're nearing the completion of our Azure projects. However, some of the modernization work will continue well past the ESSER funds because our modernization initiative plan is really 5 years in scope. Obviously, we're just entering into phase 3, but what we're trying to do is get to the point of saying that we have utilized to best effect the ESSER funds that we can use for that purpose.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Item 14, thank you, Dr. Osborne.
Item 14 is a contract renewal for FY24 Dell Computer Corporation Microsoft licensing. This contract renewal will allow the agency to continue to use Microsoft products currently licensed to support data center operation and the productivity application used by the Georgia Department of Education staff. The total contract amount is not to exceed $951,463.
Any questions or comments? Item 15.
All right, item 15 is a contract renewal for a Resultant. The contractor will provide business and technical services that include process transformation review and planning, technical guidance, and process transformation implementation. This total contract amount is not to exceed $680,670.
Dr. Osborne, I would, oh, there he is.
Yes, sir.
Will you give us a summary, a little bit more on this?
So Resultant is a vendor whom we've been working with. We're in the process, again, of changing our data collections methodology, really kind of doing some standardization of that. This company is an expert in that, and so they have been both boots on the ground, but also mind and knowledge transfer in regard to their consulting services with our data collections, analysis, and reporting team to really kind of standardize, again, on both our collections processes, but also new things to ensure the agency is 21st century ready.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, Dr. Osborne. And 16.
All right, number 16 is a contract renewal for Microsoft Corporation Consulting Services. The purpose of this contract is to provide engineering services, support, guidance, and knowledge transfer to the Georgia Department of Education's technology staff. This contract is not to exceed $953,827.
Any questions or comments? Elle should be real happy with us. All right. And 17 and 18 are contracts and amendments under 250. Any questions for any of the particular items in any of those? Okay, hearing none, hearing objection to moving items 1 through 18 to the consent agenda. Very good. Mr. Chairman, Budget Committee stands adjourned.
And you did that in record time, Mr. Johnson, as always. We have rules committee at 1:10, so because of our online and the way it has to swap over right at 1:10, we will take a quick break, restroom, water, whatever, and we will resume at 1:10 with rules.
Restrooms are still.
Are they still, yeah, so you have to go down to 19, right? Sorry.
Really?
Well, we flush in Georgia and it goes to Alabama, so.
You need to flush Alabama.
Still
these extra people.
Trust me,
It's
I
a
do.
pain.
They're
It's gonna be more difficult.
Moving on to Rules Committee, and Ms. Petty,
Didn't we
dealing
do?
with you.
Good afternoon, Chairman Downey.
Afternoon.
We have our forum.
Yes.
Dr. Taylor, we're actually gonna go out of order. We're gonna do 2, 3, and 4, and then come back to number 1.
Okay. Item number 2 is a request to adopt the Georgia K-12 standards for the biomanufacturing pathway and elementary engineering and elementary modern manufacturing courses. The proposed biomanufacturing pathway is comprised of 3 courses: Introduction to Biomanufacturing, Essentials of Biomanufacturing, and Applications of Biomanufacturing. Athens, Clarke County, home to numerous bioscience employers, along with companies, industry partners, post-secondary institutions, and the department collaborated to create this secondary career pathway in biomanufacturing to provide students with the necessary skills for entry-level employment in the field. The standards for elementary engineering and elementary modern manufacturing for kindergarten through 5th grade are a part of the department's efforts to expose elementary students to career opportunities by providing age-appropriate content for each of the CTAE career clusters. A team of teachers, administrators, post-secondary representatives, industry partners, and representatives from the International Technology and Engineering Education Association collaborated to develop these K-5 core standards that are within the CTAE STEM cluster. The standards for biomanufacturing pathway and the elementary engineering and elementary modern manufacturing courses were approved for public review and comment at the November 2023 meeting and have been posted for at least 30 days.
Fantastic.
And did we get any comments?
We only
Calm
received
down,
it.
Roger.
Everybody comes to the podium.
Contestants on the Board of Education.
We only received folks who filled out the survey. They didn't make any comments, but all the survey responses were either strongly agree or agree. So that was nice. I guess during the holidays, people are not really in tune to doing surveys for Georgia Department of Education. But the biomanufacturing, they all thought that that was on target for those industry needs in the Athens, Clarke County region down 316 to Atlanta. And then, of course, the elementary stuff. We have a lot of interest in that to start developing those skill sets and pick their interests where they might see something they may be interested in pursuing as a career. So those were the ones that went through, and that's all I got.
Thank you. Any comments, questions?
I just want to say, I am so excited about all of these, whether it was the construction stuff we did a couple of months ago, these we're doing now. This is so right on track for what we need to be doing. It is very exciting.
Yes.
Good job.
All right, any other comments? Not, we'll plan to move this to the consent agenda tomorrow. Item number 3.
And item number 3 is a request to post the Georgia K-12 standards for elementary business and office administration and elementary information technology for public review and comment. Again, these proposed courses are designed to expose elementary students to age-appropriate content within the CTAE Business, Management, and Administration cluster and the CTAE Information Technology cluster. The proposed courses were developed by a team of teachers and industry partners, and if approved, the standards will be posted for 30 days for public review and comment.
Thank you. Any comments, questions on this? About posting it for 30 days? Not? Okay. Item number 4, Dr. Taylor.
Item number 3 is a request to approve the State Board of Education meeting calendar. The bylaws of the State Board of Education require the board to adopt a calendar of meetings for the upcoming year at the last meeting of the calendar year.
Thank you. Any comments, questions? Yes, sir.
I just want to say, presented 2 options for calendars, and the overwhelming response was this particular calendar, but there has been a correction, and Mr. Donaldson a couple weeks ago reminded me that Eggs and Issues are on January 10th. So it was, of those options, everything that the majority had said they wanted, but we bumped up that meeting date 1 week. It was originally gonna be the 17th. It also, and I know Mr. Donaldson will appreciate this, it expands our one-day meetings to 2. And it seemed this year that the August meeting is a pretty light meeting as well. And it worked out really well. This year, of course, we were in Macon at GAB, and I think it's important that we visit our state schools. And what we tentatively have this for, and it will be at the pleasure of the chair, but it's scheduled for the Atlanta Area School for the Deaf. It's a one-day meeting, and so we'll have our meeting there, and then we'll tour that facility. And some of us haven't been there. Most of us, I think, have been there for one thing or another. So it also, depending on what the schedule looks like for session, our January, February, March meetings, I encourage you to talk to your state legislators, go over to the Gold Dome, take some time to get to know your state legislators, specifically in your district if you don't, and be there for them if they have any questions about ed policy, and you'll be able to be there in person January, February, and March. We had a very active education agenda for this past session. This next session will be active as well, so get involved. That's all.
Any other comments, questions about proposed calendar?
Have we put anything in place for the retreat in October?
No, not that I'm aware of. That'll be at the chair's pleasure as well. That usually starts the first of the year. So
Are you volunteering?
No.
you want to do it down at?
No,
I think there
I'm
was
just
a
trying to get my
volunteer, right,
calendar
Alan?
set, that's all.
All in favor?
Me and
See, that
Matt
resort in
volunteered.
Blackshear, they're
Me and Matt are volunteering. Yeah, sorry, the hotel at Blackshear. is-
Yeah, I haven't South Georgia.
It should be done by then.
No, no, sorry.
That was a really good retreat we had down there
It was.
a few years ago. You weren't there, Frank.
I was talking about the last one up north.
They'll get a big bill.
It'll be good. It'll be done.
Okay. And we'll plan to move this to the consent agenda tomorrow. Dr. Taylor, item number 1.
Item number 1 is a request to adopt the amendments to State Board of Education Rules 160-3-1-.07, testing programs, student assessments. This rule is being amended to incorporate the following changes. To 1, update the mathematics course and English language arts courses that will be assessed with the Georgia Milestones End of Course and Georgia Alternate Assessment 2.0. To add the dyslexia and universal reading screening assessment requirements for students in kindergarten through grade 3, and provide for an exemption of the GKIDS ELA portion for kindergartners being screened through the dyslexia and universal reading screening requirements, and to provide general cleanup updates related to the state's English language proficiency assessment and related guidance, the state's alternate assessment aligned with alternate academic achievement standards and related descriptions, the dual enrollment, advanced placement, and international baccalaureate EOC exemption for U.S. history, and the names of reference testing administration materials. At the November 2023 meeting, the State Board approved the initiation of this rule to be posted for public review and comment, and the rule has been posted for at least 30 days.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. And were there many comments?
We received about 20 comments, and they varied from A, some were get rid of GKIDS altogether. B, the other category was to, again, incorporate the reporting of the universal screening assessment after each administration, and then to the Department of Education for analysis. And then the third was around questions related to the changes to the Georgia alternate, not changes, but the change to the section for the Georgia alternate assessments, where we incorporated the language around the most significant disabilities. Sorry. I believe.
Well, yeah, I'd like to comment on a couple of things, but that you just mentioned, the alternate, that came to me from one of my districts, and so I forwarded it to policy and to Sean. And I think after you and I discussed, can Sean just kind of clarify what that more means? Because I think that would clear up for the district some of those concerns.
Sean Owens?
Yes, absolutely. So that section where most was added to, so that it reads most significant disabilities, cognitive disabilities comes directly from federal law, which is IDA Section 300. It also comes from federal law ESSA, which is Section 1111. So essentially, I think the idea is when you're updating your state rules, if you can get those in line with whatever the federal guidance is, to do so. So that's why that wording was added. It's directly out of federal law.
And those concerns were on page 2, 5, and 10 of the 14-page document. And
Helen, if I can add to that, because I had some teachers and parents reach out to me about that as well. And I think the concern was, since we have to be below the 1%, how students are being labeled most significant, if that's up to the individual team at the local school, or if there's a form that's going to be done at the Department of Education. Can you all speak to any progress on that?
Sean, do you want to speak to that question specifically?
Yes, and I think you came out, lowered a little bit on that last piece, but I think I have the gist of what you're asking. Yeah, so essentially there is no change in how this is being administered. Of course, all of these decisions are decisions. They're made at the student level, and they're made by the IEP team. So there's no change at all in how any of this is being administered. It's a change in just the addition of the wording to align with the federal guidelines.
any other questions, comments? Well, I think there are probably some other questions. Jason, are you?
Well, I had asked that all the partners involved with everything related to this, if, outside, to come and join us today. And I think we have some visitors that have come today. Helen, if you want to kind of introduce and I'd let you take over. Didn't we have some people that?
Well, what I do know is that our legislators that put together House Bill 538 and brought it together were not even aware that this was posted for 30 days. And so I think because I think they felt that the significance of what the Literacy Act was, House Bill 538, that it needed to come, they needed to come and say to us the intent of the law and how the importance of having that law, the rule reflect the law. And so I see Bethany's here and
the author of
Scott's here and Joy's here, and Bethany is the author of House Bill 538. And I want you to know that I've already pleaded about this. This is not from Helen Rice. This is from this group of people that showed and called and had no idea. And it is from Helen Rice too, because I think it's important, but I can't change the way you feel. But I think if you hear from people that did it and why they did it, just like when we did the dyslexia rule, we came back and heard the intent of the law for dyslexia and then the rule. So I think that's what.
And I agree, and that's why I asked Representative Ballard to come as the author of 538, also Scott Johnson from, Scott, what's the official name again? The Georgia Literacy the Georgia Council on, there's a quirky name, right?
Georgia Council on Literacy.
Thank you, okay. I asked Scott to come and Joy came as well for that reason. But before we jump into that, Helen, can you explain, for lack of a better word, the disagreement and the heartburn that you have and that has been conveyed to you over what has been the rule as it's been presented to us for adoption? What specifically in that needs to be changed in your eyes? I mean that's why we're here. Let's
all right. Well, I mean, I just want to make sure
I
that
don't
my
care how it
colleagues
takes.
show some favor with me. I don't want to just be talking.
No,
and
it's
not think.
Helen. But you spent a lot of time on this.
Right.
We all want to hear what you have to say.
Well, we all have had a chance to read the law, and the first thing with the law, we know that a rule should reflect the law. So what was missing in the beginning in this rule was a statement about parents and guardians after each grade level, that parents and guardians should be notified of the testing and the DOE would analyze. So those were some key things that were missing, but then after, a few of us thought, what would we do? How can we make this rule reflect the law better? So we got some guidance, as y'all know, from an outside person that sat on a board and has worked with legislators and has been, actually came and testified to House Bill 538. So in doing that,
Who was that?
Jack,
Okay, Jack.
God, I can't think of Jack's last name, but Jack, it'll come to me. Powers. And so Jack sent, I sent him a copy of this, and he sent me back some blue lines to the copy. And what he filled in with the blue line was just some clarity to make sure that House Bill 538, when our districts read it, and when they were looking at how to roll out what was in the law, that things were clear and concise. And what he put in here was something that explained significant reading disability. That was one line under what a student 501. I can't see without my glasses. 504. Section 504 student. So he put a blue line that said significant reading deficiency, which is part of the literacy law, just to kind of give an indicator of that.
Now, that's in subsection T, is that right? Where it says section 504 student?
That is on page 4
Right.
of this law.
Of the red line.
Yes, of the red line. On page 4 of the red line was a section that said, for clarity, if we're talking about a 504 student who has currently had an impairment and limits, then he thought that possibly if you explain what sufficient reading deficiency meant, then that would just give a little clarity under that. Then he put in something about tiered reading intervention plan, which means a plan that describes evidence-based reading intervention services. He doesn't explain it. It's not like how you implement. He just put that in because we had, before that, students with disabilities. So this plan is something that's used with students with disabilities and the universal reading screener. Then on page 6, he added after each grade level, kindergarten, and all of this is in the law. If you go back and look at it in the law, it says it right here on these different pages. After each administration of a universal reading screener to kindergarten students, each public or local schools system shall report results to parents and guardians of the student who was participated in the administration and to the department for analysis. He put that under every grade level that it had to deal with. When you got to 3rd grade level, he also added the tier intervention plan because it says here in the law, beginning in August the 1st to 2020, public schools, what would be required. It was just a clarification with the law and a clarification with perennial notification, which was all in the law. And so I had offered to the board, maybe I didn't explain it well, that maybe when we're reviewing this rule, that we should add that clarity to that rule because the districts, this is all uncharted waters. We have a third-party entity involved, and those are districts. And a lot of our districts won't have the resources or the manpower to really go in and search and do. It'll take them forever. What this will do, if we add the law, the law, and put that clarity in this rule, then when our systems go into it, they'll go, oh, I know what to do with this. And then when we talked about, and Matt, and Richard, we talked about having a guidelines. Well, guidelines would support all of this. A parent won't probably go into this. to learn what they need to do, but the guidelines will tell a parent. And it was sort of like what we did, like I said, with Senate Bill 48, the bill on dyslexia. It was a separate bill, we did a separate law there, and then we had a handbook that was done. And the handbook kind of broadened what the law was. And I just thought that this was important for us to know that for systems that don't have a lot of people to work, it'll be awfully hard for them to go to this place and this place and this place. But if we put this clarity in the law.
In the rule, you mean?
I mean, I'm sorry, I'm getting
Clarity
confused.
of the law. To be clear.
Of the law,
in the rule.
In the rule,
Yeah.
you've got me shaken up because I just
Clarity of
didn't
the
know
law and
I
the
was going to even. But if we put it there, I think we're doing a service for our districts and our families. And I know that when you have asked Bethany to come and speak, and I know that none of our legislators knew that we had even posted anything. They were not aware that any of this was even going online to be commented on.
One thing I would say to that, though, is that we put in the public press releases, we say what we're posting, we put what the results are, and I appreciate that legislators are busy, we're busy people too. To me, that's not an excuse that they didn't know we were posting it, because we let it be known that we were posting it. We sent a press release out. I mean, how can they not know?
Well, we only had 20 comments. How did they not know?
How could they not know?
That's right, they
Or
should know, they should
yeah.
follow what we do.
Yeah, but is it on there? But the thing is, Helen, I don't mean to interrupt.
No.
I wanna make sure that, the intent of the law is, properly, disclosed to us, and having, our representative here, Representative Ballard here, she can tell us the intent of the law. We wanna make sure that the rule reflects the law accurately. And having the information about after every administration of universal reading screener in every grade level, having that there, letting the parents know, and the analysis and all, I don't think that's too difficult to ask, to put a big kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, and just explanation or the definition of certain terms, helping them to understand exactly what is meant by it. It's not talking
But is
about
that part of-
implementation.
And again, I'm just trying to understand, is that part of the rule, or is that part of the rollout of the rule?
No,
You know, because I don't think you can put everything
You
in a
can't put
rule
everything,
that-
you can't put everything, but that's just breaking it down for the parents to understand so that they don't have to dig down in there.
I don't
It's in
think
there
parents
one-
read rules.
It's one,
It's for districts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's in
I
there
mean,
in.
I hear you,
at the end
and I
of the
wanna hear
rule, but
what
I'm just
I wanna
saying,
hear what the
put it
folks
in
have to
each-
say, definitely.
Yeah, that would
I
be
just
great.
feel like there's
Maybe
there are
we should-
lots of, and this is a problem not just with this group. This is a problem throughout, that there are things posted in any groups that we're a part of. And then people come up after the fact and say, well, we didn't know about it. Well, other than calling every single person that might be interested and telling them that they might be interested, that's not reasonable.
Yeah.
There has to be some accountability on the people that need to know also, just my 2 cents.
Mr. Donaldson. To piggyback on Martha, some of the clarity that you're asking, Ms. Rice, could that not be in teacher notes?
I don't think so.
You don't think so? You don't think that are your changes are your requested revisions, are they substantial enough that they could not be in teacher notes?
Matt, all I know about policy for a while and changing a law and having the rule reflect the law is that it should be pretty consistent with what is in here. And everything that was stated for clarity is consistent in this law. It's not the whole law, but it gives some credibility to how the law, what is stated in the law with the rule. Now, what would help are the guidelines that would build out like a handbook or whatever, because that's what the everyday person the parent's gonna use. But a district's gonna go into, because they know that, they already know that these things exist, they're gonna type that in. And the clearer that we have under each part of this that reflects the law, the better that district is to be able to serve the intent of that law and to be able to branch out and understand their next steps.
Now, it seems to me, I could be wrong, I'd like some of the educators to respond, that most average educators are gonna read teacher notes, not read our board rule. Now, they might read our board rule, but they're gonna use our teacher notes to build from. So we can add that clarity in the teacher notes. And you're saying no?
I'm saying no. Teacher
Okay.
notes are different, or they
Okay.
were when I was there. A teacher note, we're tasked with, then we don't need to put anything in here about, we got things about individuals with disabilities. We've got a whole layout of a lot of stuff in here, and it explains a lot, federal law and what. So what you're saying is we just need to have a teacher note that says, okay, federal law for this.
No, that's not what I said. I asked, were your revisions substantial enough
Well,
that it would
obviously,
change the rule?
yes.
Would it change the rule itself, or we would need to
No.
redo the rule?
The
So let's just put them in
revisions,
teacher notes.
the revisions are clarity to the rule. Here's the rule.
Sounds like teacher notes.
Well, Martha, I've taught, I guess you have taught too, but teacher notes are different. But, all I know is that the more you have in the state board rule, the clarity that you can give from this law in a rule helps people understand it, helps them follow through with the rule effectively, and make sure that that district is on task. And 132 districts don't have the manpower that our bigger districts do. So they're gonna be searching here and there and trying to find this. Why don't we put it here and put it here in the rule as it reflects the law, and do guidelines, and you can broaden the guidelines out if you wanna put it in a teacher note. But the way we were trained, and not just here, when you're doing policy, when you're changing a law into a rule, you wanna have that rule reflect the law, and you wanna have it reflect it with some kind of clarity. I'd love to hear what, Ms. Ballard, Representative Bass.
Yeah, I'm gonna let any of the other board members speak first. Did you have a rebuttal to anything they said so far?
Just the same clarification I provided sort of the last couple of months. This is not a rule on House Bill 538, and obviously the components of House Bill 538 are very important as we're working through them. This is a testing rule, and so it's a rule that was already in existence, that already included testing components. And then you mentioned, Ms. Rice, the student with disability section. That section only speaks to testing requirements related to students with disabilities. It talks about accommodations for testing. It talks about how they're coded for testing. It doesn't relate to anything additional to that. The information related to interventions for 538 for reading are very important, but they shouldn't go in the testing rule. So the purpose of this rule was to update the testing requirements for educators so that they are aware, as they look at all of their other testing requirements, that they now have these additional state requirements as it relates to literacy. That's all.
Tiffany, then we've got a lot that needs to be cleaned out of here, because testing programs and student assessments, we have everything in here from English learners, conditional administration.
But those are about the administration of the tests.
Well,
for
so
those
is
students.
this statement about the administration of what comes with the screener after what is to be done after each one of these grade levels.
But we've
So-
incorporated that language already. We incorporated the language about providing the reports in section 4, right? We didn't put it after each of the sections, but we put it under the texting regulations and procedures section, based on your feedback, as well as the reporting to DOE for analysis, the reporting of the formative assessments. They choose to change that out for analysis. So that language was added. The only language we didn't amend or add in was related to the interventions, because that probably belongs somewhere else when you start talking about what happens after the assessment. So this was just about the assessment.
There's nothing in here that talks about intervention.
Well, that gets to my question,
Yeah.
Ms. Petty, is, I'm glad you started down that road, because that was gonna be my question, because our rule books are, our law books are this thick, and you're saying this rule regards to the testing, but then the rule, I mean, are we needing then to amend the rule, a further rule, or add to a rule on it on the reporting? Because, Martha, you're completely correct in, I mean, even go back to our state board hearings, we publicize them, put them out, put them in the news, no one comes. Is that our fault? No. I mean, people, we're adults, we have reason to, regardless of that, we, as clearly stated, it's our duty to try to help implement laws passed across the street clearly into rule to translate into the classroom. So we have a duty regardless of who said something on a comment to try to do the best on that. And
We should drive people, when they call us individually, we should drive them to that
Yeah.
comment section where we can. I
Yeah.
know a lot of people don't wanna do that, but if we are not encouraging people in our roles to go to that comment section, then we can't get a good picture of what the comments are. If we are each keeping our little piece of information that we're getting from people, then we're not helping with the entire thing. And I'm not saying anyone's doing that, I'm saying it's hard to get people to drive. We all
It
are in
is.
businesses where you have to drive people to put data in certain places. That's difficult, and it takes a lot of
And we have
logistics.
part-time legislators, just like we're part-time
Yeah,
board members. They don't
absolutely.
have time to read all this stuff. They have to trust that we, the board, are going to do our job, what we're charged with, and doing this correctly. Because what I've picked up on this from the blue line is that someone way more intelligent than me on this crosswalked the law as it was written, line by line, crosswalked this rule, and said it was deficient maybe in some few areas, which sounds to me like it is if, that's the if, these aren't addressed in a further rule, or is it best addressed here? Because in my opinion, the things that were addressed by the comments Ms. Rice said, of somebody who's read the law several times and seen it, they're all accurate, they're all, to me, in my opinion, they're all legitimate and accurate and reflect the will of what the legislature said and did in law, black and white. So I guess the question I think is before us as a board, in my opinion, is that best reflected here in this rule? Or do we need to put that somewhere else? Because I'm gonna go back to Wendy's 1980, where's the beef? I don't see that, and if it's somewhere else, show me. And if not, is it best incorporated right here with some clarity? Because I also know that there are a lot of districts, and we deal with them all the time, particularly in audit, who don't have the resources, the people, and the ability to go through and read these and know these and go over. They've got people doing 10 things, and if this rule says this and it's not, they're not going any deeper than that, and they're trying their daggum best to do what's right. But if it's not in there, they don't know it. So I think the clearer we can be, the better for the people that are trying to willfully and rightfully implement this stuff on the ground. And I'm gonna pick on Emmanuel County on there.
You better leave Emmanuel.
All right, the next county over, what's Candler
Pick on
County,
Candler.
yeah, everything's not better and better. All right, so we'll pick on Candler County, and to my point is, where is it then where this crosswalk would be addressed? Because again, said it already, but I'm gonna belabor the point. These sound like very accurate and good points related to the law that was passed. Where are we doing that?
So we've already started with providing guidance to districts and schools that is regularly updated on House Bill 538. As you talk about, I guess, the other provisions of 538 outside of testing, whether that's interventions, what happens next for that student as they've gotten those results, that may need to go somewhere else. Just not the testing rule is what our argument is. And as we continue to work, updates to those rules or updates to those interventions or MTSS rules or whatever those rules are. But the testing rule is the one that we're addressing right now, that we were trying to get the information in for accuracy.
Ms. Petty,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to acknowledge Representative Ballard if she's here, if she wanted to say anything on it.
Yeah, I was gonna make sure, I was gonna let everyone hear.
Okay.
Then I was gonna let Representative Ballard, yes, DJ.
There's no doubt that what we do after the assessment, whether it's House Bill 538 or any other assessment that we give, but let's talk about 538 for a minute, because that seems to be the point of contention.
what we do after the assessment results are in is vitally important. I don't think anybody at this table disagrees with that. It sounds to me like what we can't come to agreement on is where does the follow-up intervention part belong? Is that, am I mishearing that, or Helen, or is it your position that what happens after the screening results are reported? I mean, I think, Tiffany, did you say that the parent reporting part is referenced in this rule?
On page 14.
On page
What I was asking.
13 of the red line version.
That it would be after each grade level.
After each grade level.
Kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade. I mean, it's the same wording, it's just inserted in different places rather than just embedded at the bottom of the rule.
Now, although I wasn't, and now, so that after the reporting part, which may or may not be, but I see your point. After the reporting part, there's the, what do we do at the school level? What's the intervention? And I wasn't at this meeting on Monday, but it's my understanding that Ms. Denty referenced the MTSS process at the meetings at the Capitol Monday afternoon. And so, is it also true that that's where the intervention process will be found in State Board rule, in the MTSS rule, or for House Bill 538?
I mean, I would have to get with Amy about the specific rule. We hadn't gotten to the stage yet of changing the MTSS rule, but that may be her consideration.
Okay, but if it's found in another rule?
That would probably be the most aligned.
All right, okay. Is it good practice or is it common practice, have we done this before, to reference and send people who are reading the assessment rule? Can we just say at the appropriate point, after parents are notified and results are in, see rule, whatever, the MTSS rule or whatever, can we reference that rule in this rule and send people to it so they won't miss that? Is that an acceptable policy practice? I don't want to start something that we can't finish. But I definitely don't want school districts missing out on what needs to happen after the assessment results are in. So because I understand, it sounds to me like the department's position is that's not assessment, that's intervention. And, okay. But can we reference the intervention rule in the assessment rule to send people there? I guess it's just a procedural question, and is that good policy to do that?
Steve, can I comment on what?
Well, I want to hear her response, and then I would absolutely love to hear your comments.
I mean, I had to get with Stacy on that one in terms of alignment with our other rules. It may be something that's allowable.
See, that's why I don't want to start something we're going to have to overhaul.
I think either way, though, the MTSS rule hadn't been amended yet, which is, again, I think part of the sometimes the difficulty of doing the policy before the implementation. And so districts and schools and the Department with support are now heavily into the implementation of this new law. And so I don't know if the MTSS rule is planned right now for a revision until they understand how the actual application is working out in districts and schools, which is why they're doing the regular updates and guidance to districts and schools. So I'd hate to, at least at this moment, put it in this rule and then reference something that's not there yet, but I can get back to you on that.
Stan?
I just want to say this. I know you're saying that school districts, the manpower in it, but there are people within the district office that are charged with the responsibility. And ultimately, the superintendent's charged with that responsibility. And his authority or her authority is to designate accountability and testing to an individual or handle it themselves. So we have 180 school districts, and they all have superintendents, and I've seen a lot of them over the last couple of weeks. And it is their responsibility to get with their board attorney and their GSBA reps to understand the rules that come down from the State Board of Education in training. I served as a board chair for 8 years, and I understand that. That is their responsibility. That's what they're charged with as superintendents. to understand the rules and the testing and accountability that goes with providing education to their districts.
Well, so, Helen,
Well, all right, I'm gonna show you an example. What is stated here, after third grade assessment, it says tiered reading intervention plan. It is just taken right here from this law, beginning August the 1st, 2024. That's what is stated here that shows that implementation of a tiered reading and intervention plan for kindergarten, it just tells them that those are gonna be there. This is what it looks like when it's explained. This is in a different handbook. That's what we're talking about. You will have the multi-tiered system explained in length in what she's saying. This doesn't explain it. It just says to the district, hey, after this, be aware that this is coming in. So you're right. So once they see this and the parental notification, which is in the law, then that's in here too. Once they see this, they'll know to go to the additional work that Tiffany's talking about, that guideline or whatever, and they will have that full explanation. My fear was because it's uncharted waters and we have there's a third entity, our districts are involved, that if we can explain it a little bit, you can see the difference of what this looks like. And just telling, that statement just tells them that first, second, and third grader, there will be some multi-tier assessment. And the perennial notification just gives them the time that what would happen after that. This thoroughly describes it, and page after page of what goes on. And that's what the DOE will do. I'm in agreement with everything. I just am hoping that we see the necessary need to put the clarity under each one of these. It's just saying what it is. It's not explaining anything.
well, can I respond?
Yes.
I think we're all in agreement about what needs to happen, and I guess I should turn this around another way. Let's say that we do decide to put what happens next, the blue line portion. We need to go back and look at every assessment that we give and do the same thing in the assessment rule.
No,
When you
because,
say this is uncharted water,
yeah.
we've been doing assessment, we've been assessing for a long time. And I could make the argument as a former practitioner, everything we do instructionally, it comes as a result of some kind of an assessment, whether it's diagnostic, formative, summative, it doesn't matter. Everything we do comes after an assessment. So if everything we're going to spell out about what happens next needs to be tied to an assessment, then that may require a bigger rewrite of the assessment rule than we have in mind, because the parent notification, we have a lot of parent notification on assessments that have been going on for years. I'm not trying to be difficult. I just want to make sure that we have a policy that is consistent in its format with our other policies so that our practitioners will know where to look. I certainly don't want to keep anybody in the dark about what's coming. This is a new law. There's no doubt about that. The advantage that we have with this particular law is that we have a council whose full-time responsibility is making sure that A, we implement the law faithfully, B, that the school districts around this state know what's going on and how to do it, and that we, use promising and best practices and so on and so forth. That is an advantage that some of our other previous legislation didn't have. So I don't know how to resolve this. I really don't. I just want to make sure I understand what the question is, and then I'll leave it to everybody else to vote. Because we do have to establish that we're going to stick with our current policy development practice or we're gonna have to change it in some way, because this is a little bit different. And I don't know how to answer that question.
Well, the difference is what you said, it's a law. And we're trying to take the law and fit that in. It's no different than what we did with Senate Bill 49. We took it and added exactly this, and now we're implementing. So I don't know, are you saying that maybe we should look at pull this out as a separate?
I don't know what I'm saying as far as that goes. What I can tell you is, as long as it's somewhere and people can find it,
Right.
I'm willing to be agnostic on it,
Yeah.
on where it goes. That's not a hill I'm ready to die on right now.
Do we
But I
have-
do think it's really important, that everybody that's involved with teaching literacy in this state knows, A, how many times to assess, when to do it, what to do with the results, and who to inform.
Okay, is there any other board member that would like to speak or have a question before I ask Representative Ballard? May have some questions afterwards. Representative Ballard?
Welcome to our fun, Representative.
Thank you for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. Thank you for what you do. I know that y'all are sometimes in thankless positions here, and we appreciate what you do for our kids. And I've gotten to know a lot of y'all pretty well over the last year, and I appreciate the help and support and guidance. House Bill 538 was passed because there was a need for it. And we, as a legislature, had been hearing about that need from our constituents. And since its passage, almost daily, I have heard from elementary school teachers who are so excited about this bill because they think that they will be able to better serve their students and do a better job in the classroom. I hear from middle school and high school teachers who are excited because they think that their students will learn to read well enough to handle the curriculum that they throw at them in middle and high school. And I hear from parents who are so excited because they very often have struggling readers and they do not know how to help those children at home, and they are excited that we're going to turn a corner in Georgia. And I've sat with parents who have been so frustrated that they have cried to me over their child struggling to do to master reading. And so I just want to stress to you how important this bill is and how it is being received in the community. I hear from people all the time. People grab me at church to talk to me about this. And so these parents especially are praying that we really push forward, don't ever go back, and that we faithfully implement this bill. I was asked to talk a little bit about the intent of the bill, and to me, the intent of this bill is really simple. House Bill 538, which is now signed into law, the Georgia Early Literacy Act, it is to make sure children read on grade level proficiently by the end of third grade. And I think we as a society used to do this a little better than perhaps we do it now. I think, and some of my colleagues think, that we have complicated this process and we have outsmarted ourselves, and we have maybe thrown common sense out the window at a couple of spots. We want to make sure that our children are successful after third grade, and especially as they leave high school, and we want to make sure that they are set up to do whatever it is they want to do, whether that is go into the workforce, go to a 4-year college, a 2-year college, or the military. To do this, we will accomplish this goal by requiring our school districts to use curricula assigned with the science of reading and to assess in those younger grades. And I know that we talk a lot about we just don't like all these assessments, and sometimes maybe we do get carried away, but assessments give us data. And we can't not assess. And the reason why it is so important to assess before third grade is we all know, everybody in this room knows those statistics. about if you're not reading on grade level by the end of third grade, you are most likely not going to have a successful adulthood. And the statistics are frightening. And so we want to make sure that our struggling readers are identified early. If we can identify these struggling readers in kindergarten and first grade, we might be able to give them that much help instead of having to dig them out of a hole this deep at the end of third grade, which is an impossible task. I taught high school. I know how hard it was to teach Shakespeare and Chaucer to children who couldn't even read our modern English. It was so hard. And so I don't want any teacher to be put in that position that they're having, to do that and catch kids up, 5 and 6 grade levels when they're behind. I'd like to urge you to do a few things, if you would. The universal screeners used in our districts for these assessments must be of the highest quality. We don't want to use assessments that are not going to give us really great, solid data that we can use as we go forward. I would like us to follow the lead of some of our other states, especially in our region, and limit the choice of the screeners to maybe those 3 that have been vetted as the really top quality ones by the Deal Center, I believe. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. Other states are a little bit ahead of us in this process, and many of those, North Carolina and Mississippi, come to mind that limit the number of screeners that can be chosen. And so I think that'll give us a really good measurement tool. And finally, I've been sitting over there listening to you talk about the rule and this rule and that rule, but I really think this is a big deal, and it is a lot of changes. I get it. But I really think everything from House Bill 538 needs to be put together in plain English, maybe not in your rule, maybe in another document you can give out to our school districts in plain English with the definitions, the dates, and the requirements, so that it is just super easily accessible for our superintendents, our teachers, and our parents. Using clear, concise language in a document without legalese goes a long way to making us all look transparent and look like we're really caring about our kids. And so I really do appreciate y'all letting me come today. And I think that I entered into this with looking at what was really good for our kids. And I think if we always keep our eye on the prize of what is good for our state's children, we won't make wrong decisions. Thank you.
Could you wait just a moment in case anyone has?
Sure.
Anyone on the board have a question for Representative Ballard?
So are you thinking a standalone rule, or are you thinking clarity where we are here?
Either or would be great. I think it's, I think that it could be, if I probably had my heart's desire, it might be like a standalone thing, just all of 538 in one clear, concise place.
So almost like this is the testing rule, this is not.
Yeah.
It's not 5, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions for Representative Ballard?
I want to thank you for bringing that up. That was something that I wanted for us to maybe come back and take a look at the screener. I've been told there are too many, even Representative.
I might have heard that too.
Representatives over there, Dubnik, he said it's just too many. And after the Deal Center did the psychometric review on the universal screeners, I would like for us to take a look at it and bring forth the ones that had the highest review from the center, and to be able to have not so many, but break it down to like the top 3, and I think there were 2 that were kind of in the gray area. So
Mississippi, I think, uses maybe 1. North Carolina, I think maybe 5. They have 5 you could choose from, I believe.
So, any other comments for Representative Ballard? If not, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Any other comments, questions? Ms. Aller?
Yeah, I mean, it just sounds to me that what I heard, and I'm not a lawyer, okay? No offense, Rich, I'm not a lawyer, or Jason.
Thank you.
You know, I'm not a lawyer, but what she said about clear, concise language, to me, rules are more of a legal explanation. Okay, it may not be the legalese that's in a bill. This is just how me as an average person looks at things like this before not as a board member, but as a person that uses this kind of stuff. The bill, it's got a lot of legalese in it. Okay, that's why we look at shall and may and how things are worded. Then the rule is really what kind of tells the state agencies, the LEAs, those kind of people how to act to it. And then I think what the representative was talking about is a brilliant idea, is that some kind of document that is, this is, you know, literacy 101, and this is how this. A 538 primer, I like that. There is a great pollster that does a 538 poll. That's why it always sticks in my mind that way. But anyway, that's just kind of what I heard you say, and I appreciate, because I think that we're getting a little too bogged down in what, you know, if we put the bill in the rule, then it doesn't accomplish anything in my view. But that's just my opinion.
Any other comments, questions?
I have a question, Dr. Taylor. Dr. Taylor, have we not sent out timelines and guidance to our districts concerning the implementation of this rule?
Yes, so, and we shared that with the board at your retreat with the link.
And so I want to make sure, we are gonna follow the law. We are sending out information, and I think, did we not, I think there was some need for clarification. Did we not send out clarification?
Yes, that link is updated as
Okay,
we.
so again, once again, we have been sending out information to our districts about the rule, about the law, about the implementation, about the timeline. And so we have constantly been listening to what is out there to make sure that there is no misunderstanding about what the expectations are, what they will be, and how it will be handled. So again, like I said, we don't give you or send you out everything that's out there. Now, if you want to start receiving every single thing we send out, we can make that happen. That will not, like I said, you won't hurt my feelings whatsoever. But I'm just letting you know that things are being done that, like I said, we're gonna follow the law. There is nothing that is there. The intent of what that looks like, I think whether we look at a white paper, you know, such as what I'm thinking, a guidance paper that comes with that. I mean, this is something we constantly upload that. I think with the law itself or what the rule we're looking at, this is just, again, just the testing. It is not the implementation, it's not things there, because some of this requires more detail. It requires, you know, perhaps a little more simplification. If we're looking at providing our parents for guidance of that, I mean, once again, they do not need to get locked in all this jargon that's in here, because, you know, we don't, you know, one thing that I want to make sure our staff, and what we try to make sure, is that we are not convoluting and making a mess of the implementation. I think let's keep it as simple as we possibly can. And again, that's what we're trying to do with our districts. We have continuously issued forth information. Like I said, there shouldn't be any questions about what is coming. And we have done that across the, you know, board. We continue to work with our districts with that. Because at the end of the day, they're gonna have to report. We're gonna know whether they're reporting or not. That will not be a secret. And I think that, you know, with screeners, again, based on the MAU, based on the information that's out there, you know, hopefully people are doing their due diligence, that if it is supposed to be a good screener, I think I want to find out what's going to be the best. We're also looking at cost and funding of that. You know, that is something, again, that we have to look at. We're working with members of the General Assembly, because Gwinnett County is completely different than Taliaferro County. And, you know, and so when you're looking at things of that nature, we want to make sure that again, somebody can afford that. And that's why, you know, having that discussion with, you know, the budget committee, and in fact, I'll be going over a little bit later and we'll be talking about the budget. But, you know, I just want to let you know that some of the things that were addressed, it's being done right now and has been done for several months on that.
Superintendent Woods.
Yes.
Can I share something?
Sure,
Yes.
you certainly may.
I don't know if Talisa can help me do this or not.
I just wanted to speak to just a minute about some of the policy, some of the guidance that we've been providing to the school districts to help them in their decision-making, their understanding about what we need to do in House Bill 538 and how that translates to their day-to-day practices. So let me ask, Talisa, can you help me pull up something on the website? Okay, if you'll go to our Georgia DOE webpage. This document was first released in the summertime, and I would be remiss to tell you if we're on the 4th or 5th iteration. But what happens, we call it the Aligning State Literacy Policies and Practices. That's a mouthful, so what I call it is the ALP, and that's kind of the acronym that has stuck because we talk about this document. Every 2 weeks, we meet in conjunction and collaboration with the RESA, and so district and leaders are invited to come to that. We talk about the ALP. In fact, we also partner with GASIS, so tomorrow morning, we'll be meeting with curriculum directors, and we talk about what happens at the state board meeting. But this document is the foundational piece of what district leaders and school leaders are using to really unpack and understand House Bill 538. So, Talisa, if you'll go to offices and divisions, and just like any good website, there's more than one way to skin the cat, you might say, but this is how I get there all the time. If you'll go to the curriculum and instruction link for me, please. Right there. This is the landing page for curriculum instruction. If you scroll down to the What's New section right there, on updates, that very first bullet is Aligning Literacy State Policies and Practices. That's the document that I'm referencing, that we reference and call it the ALP. If you go here, this is the practical guide. And if you'll just start scrolling down, Talisa, I can talk through it. But this actually synergizes not only House Bill 538, but it also talks about what is required with the dyslexia legislation and also combines our new ELA standards that we're moving toward that implementation in the fall of 2025. So as you move through this document, it breaks it down for our leaders. It has every section that talks about understanding the Early Literacy Act. It tells you the 5 core components that we're focused on. If you'll keep going, Talisa, it talks about how we meet the requirements. We reference anything in there that is relevant to the conversation. You will see this is about the English language arts. It reminds us where the deadlines are and the timeline. And I'm going to ask you to stop just a second, Talisa. And why is this important? Because there's a ton of information coming out. So this is the one-stop shop where you go, and this is the practitioner's guide to making the real work happen in the district. So if you'll keep going, Talisa, we'll go down some more because I want to get to the reference in the conversation around the timeline. Here you can see where we've connected all the legislation, the topics, keep going. When we have approved the list of dyslexia screeners, universal screeners, the HQIM list that you approved at the last board meeting, all of this is linked in this document, so I don't have to go search for it and peck. I just keep this document right there in the forefront. If you'll keep going, you'll get to the timeline, so just keep going, Talisa, because there's a lot in here, but there's a reason there's a lot, so you can chunk it down into each individual section. Keep going all the way down. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Keep going. Keep going. This is the new part with the defining instructional materials. It just was added after last state board meeting. This is the part about professional learning, where we can talk about what the requirements are from House Bill 538 for that. There's the metrics. Keep going, Talisa, and we're fixing to get to the part where, as a district or a school leader, here's the dates. It gives you the date. It tells you exactly what's expected. It tells you progress to date and what's coming. So if you just scroll down quickly, it's too much to talk about and go through, but it gives a really concentrated view of exactly what's expected and when I'm supposed to do it, what's already been decided, what's in progress, and what's coming. So I just thought it was important. I wanted to kind of point that out because I think this is a very valuable document. I can tell you as a practitioner myself, this is exactly the kind of document that I would want. It's kind of like a lesson plan, like a teacher uses a lesson plan for his or her instruction. This is kind of like a lesson plan for those folks that are serving as district leaders, for our superintendents, and this is something that we've really been working on to make sure that every practitioner knows that this exists so they can help guide their understanding. And because with understanding comes the ability to make really strategic decisions. So at the end of the day, what happens is exactly what our common goal is, and that is to increase the opportunity for our students to have the best opportunity to read at the highest level possible so that we all know what we want them to do. We want them to graduate, and we want them to have every possible opportunity they have to go find success, whatever success means for each individual student. So thank you for that little point of privilege to share that information, but I hope that that's helpful and informational. I'm happy to answer any questions about it. I will tell you that I don't try to remember all the dates myself. That's why there's a document. In fact, my book bag's in my office, and I thought, I wish I had my book bag because I keep a copy of this document with me at all times so I can pull it out. So,
Dr. Aldridge, this has been shared with whom typically?
it's shared every week in my Right Now resources. I send out guidance every week to K-12 curriculum directors, and then it also has a distribution enrollment of about 1,700 folks. This also goes out in the Superintendent's Digest anytime that there is an update made to it. We also talk about it, like I said, we meet every 2 weeks with Heads Together. That's our collaboration with RESA. We meet once a month with our GASES collaborative, and we talk about it every time we're on there because that's folks have questions about this right now, so we're talking about it. It's great for us. We hear where the understanding is. We hear where we need to work on more clarity, and we're able to go in and update this document. Every time we update it, the date will change, and in the index, we make a note about which sections have had an update. So we communicate it, and we talk about this document almost weekly. So
Another question, have you and Dr. Timberlake been in conversation with each other?
absolutely, we talk just about every day.
Again, Dr. Timberlake, head of testing. So again, both the implementation and the testing part have been in communication with each other.
This document's also been, every time we are on the road, Amy, Denny, Jennifer Lindstrom, whoever is presenting, this document is embedded into our presentation. In fact, we were just at the GSBA conference last week. This document was referenced in our presentation there. It was referenced at Bootstrap earlier. I can't keep up with my calendar either, but a couple weeks ago, everywhere we go, we reference this. It's a standing slide in any presentation.
Anything, other questions of her? If not, then Scott, then Stan.
Got it. I was looking through, and I know we're not tying the legislation to this, but it keeps coming up. And legislation was very clear in what the board's responsibilities were. Number one is implementing uniform grade appropriate metrics. We've done that. Approve high quality instruction materials. Done that. Establish a procedure to annually certify to Godot that such school high quality instruction materials that's in process. The universal screeners list, we've done that. The other thing is adopt a formative reading assessment for students in the first and second grades. And looking at this rule, I mean, it basically says that. That's what it does. It says, for the second, and I'm reading for the second portion, subject to appropriations, LEA shall administer a formative assessment, which is what we're required to make sure happens, with a summative component that is tied to performance indicators in English, language, arts, and or reading and mathematics in grade 2. It has the same language for grade 1. So it's there. I mean, this is really helping us accomplish what is in HB 538. Now, if we Stan brought up a good point. It's if we start taking adjustments to this and we're kind of doing it outside, it can kind of snowball. You're going to end up with exceptions to these rules. For example, say, go ahead and follow this legislation except for this, and then you got to go over here and look at this sidebar rule that we have and so forth. So if we're going to do something in addition, we've got to be very careful about how that's structured.
I just want to, Dr. Aldridge talked about presenting, and so I became familiar with what you were presenting at GSBA, and there were a number of superintendents and school board members and school board chairs that also got this information. And so I just wanted to go back and just echo that, there are people who are responsible for making sure that this get disseminated to the appropriate people within their district. And I do commend the DOE for that presentation at GSBA because that was talked about a lot.
Well, I'm a little reluctant to do this, but I think there are some policy development questions and also a couple of communications issues and maybe a couple of other things that I'm not sure we're gonna be able to get answers to today. So, having said that, I'd like to make a motion that we table this rule until for further work so that we can work all this out and bring it back in January. I think it's not because I don't think that the intent of the rule is misaligned with 538. I just want to make sure that, as Scott said, that if we set a precedent for how we're going to implement everything that's in the law and where we're going to put that we don't establish or controvert an established procedure that's not best practice. So I'll just make the motion that we table this.
Second.
It's just for the committee, it's just for the committee.
Yeah.
On the committee. Committee vote, favor?
Yes.
Yes.
We will table item number 1. And with that,
I just have a question, and I don't think that's debatable once it's been voted on.
Right.
Is there a timing element to this that we need to be concerned about?
is there
Ms. Taylor, is there a timing element with the adoption of this rule that we need to consider?
No, it incorporates essentially the requirements in law, so either way districts are bound by the requirements, whether they're in the rule or whether they're in the law, so.
I just have one question. So if we bring it back, we change it, we're gonna have to post it again, get comments again, wait another 30 days.
in February?
Right, so if you change it, we're pushing it out
I'm aware of
another
that.
90 days.
I'm aware of that. But you're right.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Okay. Completes the rules agenda.
All right, thank you, Ms. Petty. All right, and thank you to our guests. Mr. Johnson, I know you were here, thank you for coming. Representative Ballard, thank you for all you do. And anytime you need anything from us, please, and tell your counterparts over there, give us a call, shoot us an email, we will help in any way we can within policy questions. That concludes Rules Committee. At this time, we have a need to go into executive session. I'll entertain a motion as such to discuss legal matters, personal matters, and any other matters.
So moved. Second.
Okay, not all at once. Any discussion, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we will be in executive session.